welcome back to Lex Reads. So in today's video, we are going to be comparing authors' debut novels to their sophomore book. I was curious to see if I like some authors' debut novels compared to, their sophomore novels. And I have a really good list here that I want to share with you guys. Of course, it's all by Black authors. That's just what we do here. So yeah, let's just get started. The first author is Daniel Black. You guys know how much I love Daniel Black. So I think Daniel Black's first book was They Tell Me of a Home. And then his second novel was Perfect Peace. Now I'm going to have to give it to, these were both great. Okay, great books. Perfect Peace. This was just beyond fantastic. This actually was our Unsung Black Book Club pick for August. Yeah, for August. Like I said, I really enjoyed it. This probably was I would give it a 4.5. This I would give a 5. Okay. With Daniel Black, his writing is it's like no other. He just knows how to tell a well-rounded story. His writing is fantastic. He literally puts you in the mindset of Arkansas. Usually all his books are set in Arkansas. He puts you in a mindset of a Black male, okay? And also too, he knows how to write women characters. Usually I always say, a lot of times I don't like when men write like women characters, specifically Black, because they just get it wrong. But he doesn't get it wrong. He honestly doesn't. I have read 3 of his books, and he's an author where it's kind of like an automatic buy. When he comes up with something, I'm getting it, I'm reading it. I mean, that's just what it is. So yeah, but in this case, Perfect Peace is my favorite. Next is James Baldwin. So James Baldwin's debut novel was Go Tell It on the Mountain. And his next was Giovanni's Room. Now, I'm going to have to say, for this one, Giovanni's Room. The reason why is, these both are fantastic. I'm a fan of James Baldwin's fiction writing as opposed to his nonfiction, but he's an author that can write both, because, some authors, they can't write nonfiction and fiction. He can write both. I think this one was like a semi-autobiographical kind of book. It was loosely based, on him. He grew up in a religious household. His family thought he was going to be a preacher. And you just see his life in New York. You see his strict father, that daddy was much. And then with this girl, first of all, this book he was so bold to write this. You have a Black gay man that wrote a book with no Black characters. And this was when did Giovanni's Room come out? In the 50s? Yeah, Giovanni's Room came out in 1956. And like I said, a Black gay writer, male, and you're not going to write about any, Black characters in your book. And he got heavily criticized for that, like heavily. This book set in the 1950s, set, in Europe. And you have Giovanni, the, suave Italian man. Out of these two, Giovanni's Room. Next is Wallace Thurman. Now, Blacker the Berry was his first book, and his second book was Infants of the Spring. Wallace Thurman clearly is from the Harlem Renaissance. Y'all know that is my stuff. Love Harlem Renaissance. I'm going to have to go with Infants of the Spring, even though this was really good. But this Infants of the Spring, this is, first of all, no one really talks about it, and that's up my alley. But Infants of the Spring, it talks about the Harlem Renaissance during the Harlem Renaissance. You literally have characters in this book that are based on real life people, real life writers during that time, like Langston, like Zora. And you just see a group of artists, writers, photographers, painters, and they're trying to start a literary journal. And if you know anything about Wallace Thurman, he started the literary journal Fire, which included stories from Zora and Langston and art from Aaron Douglas. So you just see the woes of being basically a starving artist. Yeah, this, my favorite, as you can see, annotated it like nobody's business. So yeah. Next is Brooke Bennett. And her first book was The Mothers. And then, of course, her second book was The Vanishing Half. I'm going with The Vanishing Half. I have 2 copies of this book. Okay, that's how good it was. I actually read this first, and then I was like, you know what? I wanted to read her debut novel, and I actually bought her debut novel before I bought this, and I read this back, I want to say last year. And oh my goodness, just was amazed. I think the reason why I probably love this, I know because it kind of bites off of Passing by Nella Larson and The Black of the Berry by Wallace Thurman, clearly Harlem Renaissance writers. And you know, it talks about a small Louisiana town that they don't like people that are dark skinned. They think you should associate with them and all of that. I mean, those 2 twins, and to see, you know, how they navigate their worlds, unbelievable. She can write. Only hiccup I would say with Brooke Bennett, because I've read, you know, both of her books, she kind of leaves you hanging a little bit. But she kind of leaves you hanging a little bit. You know, you want more. Even though I would say, since the subject matter of this was so just, with some ups and downs, it kept you on your toes, it was kind of like, this story is so good that I don't want to say you didn't care, but it was like, okay, girl, I wish you would have said a tiny bit more, but I'm fine with it. This, I wanted a little bit more. You have a young girl that gets involved with the preacher's son. Some things happen, and she's basically alone, okay? And her mother has recently committed suicide. She's living with her dad. I believe she is, I know she's in high school. I want to say a senior or junior. Either way, she's in high school. And the choices that she makes, especially when she gets older, it's just like what she did to, if you guys have read this, but what she did to her best friend, Nadia, the main character, needed to be beat, okay? Totally beat. I mean, no excuse. But the ending, you just, well, clearly I'm not gonna give it away, but it was kind of like, oh, okay, what's gonna happen next? Or like, okay, like, what about her? You know what I mean? But overall, it still was a good story. I would give this a 3. I would give this a 3-star, but I would give this a 5-star. Fantastic. Next is Edwidge Dante Cat, and Breath, Eyes, and Memory was her first book. And her second book was The Farming of Bones. Now, I'm going to go with Breath, Eyes, Memory. This, fantastic. Clearly, Edwidge is a Haitian writer. And you have a... Oh, Lord, this one was deep, okay? You have a young girl. She has been living in Haiti with her grandmother. And her grandmother's like, you know, your mom wants to, you know, you to live with her in the United States. I believe in New York. And she goes. But she knows a little about her mother. She knows nothing about her father at all. And there's a reason why. I mean, the Haitian culture, they test to see if you are still pure, meaning they test to see if you're still a virgin. And girl, this is to get your mind right, okay? I was beat, I would say. That mom, oh my goodness. And also, too, I love the fact that you see the young daughter, you see her as a kid, as a teenager, and as an adult. And you see how she, you know, has her own children. And yeah, but I would say this, I don't even remember what this was about, if I'm being honest with you. Yeah, I don't even remember what this is about. Sorry, y'all. Next is a romance book. Both of them are. It is by Jane. Okay, I'm always gonna butcher her name. Ahara, girl. I know she's Nigerian. Okay. Her first book was Ties That Tether, and her second book was The Sweetest Remedy. First of all, let's get into her covers. Her covers are always bomb, okay? Now with this, I would say her debut novel is the best. Because it reads like a romance. This kind of gives me, it gives me YA vibes. With this, you have a young woman that is in her 20s. She lives in Canada. She promises her father dies when she's younger, but she promises her father that she's going to marry a Nigerian man. She's in her 20s, single. Her mom keeps her sending her on dates and everything like that. But one day she had a one-night stand, and he is not Nigerian. He is Hispanic, I believe. And you just thinking, you know, it's a hit and quit situation. Never gonna see this man again. Girl, they end up working together, and then some things go on. Okay. This was so good. After reading this, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get like all her books. Read this. This is about a young girl. Her mother is white. Her father is Nigerian. She doesn't really know her dad. He's like estranged, but he like took care of her basically. He dies, and his family, he has a whole, you know, family in Nigeria with kids, wife, and everything. The kids nor the wife knows nothing about her. And her mom's like, are you going to go to the funeral? It's kind of hesitant, but then she's like, I guess I should go. And like her dad's side has like money and I mean everything, and people know them. And like I said, he didn't tell them that he had a child, okay? And also he didn't tell them that she's half white. So yeah, but it's a romance book, and she kind of gets with one of she kind of falls for one of her dad's employees. But yeah, it read like a YA book. It didn't read like a romance. So yeah. Next is Toni Morrison. So her first book was The Bluest Eye, and her second book was Sula. No brainer for me is Sula. Okay, this is probably the easiest book from Toni Morrison that you can understand. It's about two young girls and you see them from childhood all the way to adulthood. It's the easiest Toni Morrison book that you can navigate, because y'all know Toni, oh Lord, she can be a lot. Personally, The Bluest Eye is too deep for me. And I read heavy books. You know, I mean, girl, Picola's pregnant by her daddy, and I mean, she want to be, you know, white woman with blue eyes, and I mean, it was a lot. Okay, it was a lot, but I mean, it's still a good book, don't get me wrong, but this is a book one and done. I don't need to read it anymore. I think I read this when I was about 19 years old, and I don't need to revisit it at all. I actually would consider revisiting this. Next is Terry McMillan. So Terry McMillan's first book was Mama, and her second book was Disappearing Acts. I'm going to have to go with her first book. This is kind of like a semi-autobiographical book of hers, like loosely based, because Terry comes from one of 6, you know, siblings, and she was born in Michigan in Port Huron. And they didn't have any money, single mama, and yeah, and that's basically what this is. It's so good. Also, to the main character, Frida, she's the oldest, Terry's the oldest, and Frida becomes a writer. Terry became a writer. So yes. Disappearing Acts, this got on my nerves, y'all. Well, this didn't get on my nerves. You have, what's the guy name? Well, he was, I don't want to say trifling, but Franklin. Girl, he didn't tell Zora his little past relationship, and she fall for him. You know, he don't got no money. He barely got it. I don't know. Not barely. He doesn't have a high school diploma. He will work, but the thing is, because he doesn't have a high school diploma, it's hard for him to get, you know, things. And Zora is a teacher and an inspiring singer. And they get together, and girl, this actually was a TV movie. It starred Sanaa Lathan as Zora and Wesley Snipes as Franklin, and they did a fantastic job. I mean, personally, I listened to the book, and it was a good book. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Terry's dialogue is fantastic, but it's not my favorite. Not my favorite at all, but it is worth reading. Next is my girl, Bernice McFadden. So her first book was Sugar. And her second is The Warmest December. I actually don't have a dust jacket for this. I'm going to go with Sugar. I have 2 copies of Sugar. Sugar Lacey is a character you'll never forget. At all. At all. Okay? First of all, that name, Sugar Lacey. Come on now. The Warmest December is probably my least favorite Bernice McFadden. And I say least really loosely because her writing is just fantastic. She's my favorite author of all times. Like, oh my goodness. It's just that it's kind of hard to read because you have the father that he was horrible. I mean, that daddy, he's every time you came home, You know, he was always screaming and yelling. He was abusive towards the mama, towards the kids. I mean, just angry, okay? Like horrible, horrible. And she's reflecting back on her life, and her dad is in the hospital. And, you know, she's like, I don't even know why I'm visiting this man. He just was not a good human being. I mean, he was awful, awful, okay? And she's just basically, like I said, reflecting on her life. It was real deep. It was real deep. If you got daddy issues, this ain't gonna be for you. I'm gonna just say that. But out of these two, Sugar, number one. Next is Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. You guys know how much I love Chimamanda. Chimamanda introduced me to African literature. Her first book was Purple Hibiscus, and her second was Half of the Yellow Sun. I'm gonna go with Purple Hibiscus. I like Half of the Yellow Sun. The backdrop is the Biafra War. Although the backdrop is, you know, about a war, you still have, you know, it's still a love story. You have two sisters or twins. What Elena did to Kainene. Could not forgive her. Also, too, what happened to Kainene? What happened to Kainene? I personally have my opinion. I don't want to give it away if y'all haven't read it, but what happened to Kainene? That's all I'm going to say. This, unbelievable. You have a man that is religious is not even, that's not even a way to describe him. He is the type of man that, because he is super, 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 super religious, where he does things to his family that is not of God, but he think that he is serving God. He abuses his kids physically. He abuses his wife. But girl, there was a twist towards the end. And when you realize what happened, it was like, oh, straight up. Girl, all I have to say is that mama, and that daddy deserved everything that he got. It was perfect. If you've read this, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, please read this. You got closure with this book. You honestly did. Loved it. And lastly, another African writer. It is Peace Aduzze Mendy. Her first book was His Only Wife, and her second book was Night Bloom. I'm going to have to go with His Only Wife. This actually came out this past June. I really liked it. I gave it a 4.5 star. This 5 star. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Oh my goodness. Her writing, she's a writer where whatever she comes up with, I'm getting. Okay. This did not read like a debut novel. You have a woman that is Afi. She is going to basically be in an arranged marriage, but her husband doesn't show up to the wedding, which actually is a custom, I think, in Ghana sometimes. But then, you know, but then she finally meets him, and she basically, you know, falls in love with him or whatever. But there's a reason why his parents want her to marry him. Is because he has like a girlfriend that they don't approve of. And Afi comes from basically nothing. And his side of the family is like really, really rich. And so they're like, well, she not go protest and she go be a simple little wife. And she isn't, okay? But the dialogue, unbelievable. Oh, with some tea in this book. This book actually, for a subject matter that's kind of like a little serious, it's really funny. Peace is actually really funny. I love her writing. I love, love, love her writing. This, you have two cousins that are more like sisters. They are obviously from Ghana. So it's set in Ghana, United States. One cousin is not really smart, but she is really good at cooking. Another cousin is extremely smart. Goes to university in United States. And then you see how their life basically navigates. But some things happened to one of the cousins, and it was a lot. I really did like this book. I gave it a 4 star. I actually did a reading vlog on this, but I would say out of these two, this is number 1. And then this cover is so pretty. Love this cover. Minus the Reese sticker, but girl, the cover is really pretty. So yeah, guys, that is it for my comparing debut novels to their sophomore novels. You can see I kind of had like was it even? Yeah, guys, that's all I have for you, and I'll be back with more Black Books. Bye.